everyone. Welcome to LexTalk, World's talk show presented by Click of the Creators. Today, we have Mr. Frederick Tay with us. Mr. Tay currently is the Senior Legal Counsel for Hong Kong, Singapore, and Taiwan operations, as well as the legal business partner to a global marketing organization within GSK. There are a lot of responsibilities that he is responsible for. Net is cast is really wide, but to mention one of it, it is providing legal advice to data-driven activities run from the global hub. And we'll understand more about his role and his responsibilities while we dwell down into the session. But before that, without further ado, let's welcome him. Hello, Mr. Tay. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hey, hi. Good. I'm great. I'm great. Thanks to have me in this video.
It's all mine, sir. Thank you for getting some time out of your busy schedule for us today. All right, so I tried my level best to cover things about you, you know, in the starting of the session. But my first question to any lawyer is about a case that will intrigue us more as viewers and as a host, me as well. So if you can guide us through a complex legal issue that you worked upon, and if you can also describe the complexity around it, that would be a great way to start the session.
Sure. No worries. But maybe just before I begin, just the usual formalities. Whatever views that I've expressed here is my personal opinion and not necessarily the views of the company. So if you ask me to just pin down on a complex legal issue, that is going to be a challenge in itself. As you correctly pointed out, there will be a lot of different types of challenges that in-house counsels do face in the course of their rendering of activities. The more recent one that I could allude to and I'm happy to share relates to one of the largest demerger that happened in recent history in relation to our demerger from our consumer healthcare business. So in that demerger activity, there were a lot of challenges that came out from it. I think the first and foremost is recognition of the fact that, even though we're working towards a demerger, we are very much the same company at the prelude to the demerger. So all those activities that we support for, in terms of the separating of the contracts, in terms of advising on business development deals that could happen going forward when the entities demerged, itself poses a lot of challenges in itself. First and foremost, as I said, would be potentially any conflict of interest. Given that we were discussing about future positions at the current stage, we need to be mindful that at the same time we are sharing information, but at the same time we need to be mindful of the fact that we can't be acting in a position that is detrimental to the company that is remaining in the organization after the demerger. On top of that, because we are working across various markets and countries, we have to deal with their regulatory constraints as well that might arise from the demerger activity. So I would say, as I pointed out from the first instance, it's not easy to just point to one complex legal issue, but it's actually a collective of different types of issues arising from the particular deal itself. So I would say in that method that I just described, it is very much challenging because as usual, apart from those complex issues, we're also challenging and rushing against time because there is a announced deadline of the 18th of July for the demerger to occur. So everything is, running against time, dealing with interest, dealing with multiple stakeholders, all accumulating together.
He said it's very hard for any lawyer to point a single complex issue, throughout their career because everything is just brings another complexity around the profile. So I'll try to change it. Try to change the keyword. Uh, Key challenges. What are the key challenges that are faced by in-house counsels in supporting the business as a whole and avoiding giving the impression that legal is just a cost center?
Yeah, no, you're right. So, if you will indulge with me, every time when this question arises, and it's not something that is a fresh question. If you ask me, it's an age-old question that's always put up in front, a challenge that's always put up. And legal, like any other support function, always have to sort of fight for a seat on the table. So I would say, if you ask me a question like this, I'll just put on an elevator pitch, so to speak. Most often than not, the key issues that we face is the business mindset of what exactly legal plays a role in relation to the business. They will think that legal is just pointing out the key issues in relation to the problem, and most often than not, maybe even seen as posing an obstacle to a business proposal or an exciting business proposition. So in those instances, when those happen, it's the challenge of trying to convince them where we play the most value and creating value out of those conversations. So for example, if a business comes to you and say, oh no, we have a new proposal about creating something innovative using high technology, we want to run this across. On face value, you might be thinking, oh, legal's job is just to look at where the key obstacles are and just proposing those obstacles to them. If you do so, then the key issue that the business will face or you will face is that there is a breakdown of communication, because the business will be thinking, oh, no, this is just what legal is doing again, pointing out issues, but not coming up with any solution. To resolve this, I think as a proactive business partnering, we actually need to go beyond just finding obstacles, keeping yourself updated with the key trends, key external trends, and using those information you have to guide those conversations and find alternative solutions. You're not necessarily the business decision maker. I'm not suggesting in-house counsels to assume the role of decision maker, but what I'm trying to suggest is that you can be a very good counsel, providing key recommendations that could influence and structure the direction in which the project goes. So just to summarize the whole conversation I just mentioned, I think the key thing, the key challenge is trying to look at changing the mindset of the business, that we are not there as an obstacle. I would say we are there as almost signposting them to the right direction so that the projects can go well.
I mean, very rightly said. Recently, we had a conversation with another gentleman, and they said that now lawyers or even organizations are looking at the in-house legal team, not just as a legal team, but also an indirect part of the revenue generation, through their decisions and a lot of things that they are responsible for. So you rightly put. I'll try to. I mean, of course, we'll dwell down into the in-house counsel role much, but apart from this, I also want to have your views on some other things that recently happened, in past. I mean, if I start with, let's say, pandemic. You see, everywhere. I mean, in my side of the world and your side of the world as well, courts began to move remote proceedings and availability, which was pretty shocking for us as countrymen. What do you think? What's your take? Is this a sustainable way to increase the access to justice? What's your opinion?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, we need to recognize when we look at a question about increasing access to justice, there are actually two parts to this question, if you ask me truthfully. The first part would be what we call the practical restraints from access to justice. So things like having technological advances, changing how the courts conduct the trials, like through remote proceedings, that could technically only remove the physical barrier, right? The physical restrictions. But the second part of the equation actually relates to the substantive part of it, which is truthfully, how do we ensure that the right the guys on the street actually even know what rights do they have in the first place, right? So if you ask me, if I just look at physical restrictions, putting down the physical restrictions through what we have seen in recent years as a result of the COVID pandemic around remote proceedings. Yes, on face value, as I said, it removes the physical barrier. But if you ask like a small market like Singapore, where physical barrier itself might not be a key issue, then the secondary question is, what actually is the downside of having remote proceedings? So I just want to cite a particular case which was quite well reported back in 2021. I think it was a case in March 2021 relating to a US trial where the situation deals with a family violence case. In that situation, the court decided to have a remote proceeding. Both the complainant, the plaintiff, and defendant were all dialing in remotely. But the sad thing is, through halfway through the trial, it was subsequently realized that both the plaintiff and defendants were in the same house. So the plaintiff actually was quite worried about saying things that could trigger the defendant, because knowing that her safety is actually at risk. So I think that is actually one of the key issues of having remote proceedings. How well can you ensure the safety, especially in disputes where it relates to potential harm to the plaintiff themselves? So then on the flip side, if you ask me, okay, so what about the substantive part of the equation which I just mentioned? I would say the key thing is you look at how Singapore legal system has been built up. they recently announced having, two lawyers, setting up in community centers, setting up pro bono type of work, where, the ordinary man on the street could actually reach out to the lawyers in those centers to seek for legal assistance. Almost akin to what I call, like your community hospitals, community clinics. You might say again, at face value, oh, this is also increasing access to justice because the man on the street right now wouldn't have to travel so far. They wouldn't have the barrier of interaction with lawyers because this is all made available to them at the heartland malls. Which I think, yes, is a good solution. It's a good idea, but I would think you need to balance out with the risk of trying to also make sure that we don't create a highly litigious society. Having all this access to justice need to be balanced out the fact that people still need to live and understand accept the fact that there should be harmonious living together, right? So I think again, from that perspective, the Singapore government has done quite well by increasing the status of mediation. So mediation as an alternative dispute resolution. So we will know in the mediation proceeding, we don't have a situation where both the complainant and the sort of the plaintiff in the case actually have a sort of a very very antagonizing proceeding, because in the mediation there's no your usual cross examination and whatnot. So it actually does, in a way, allows for a platform to resolve dispute, but more, I would say, in a more harmonious rather than acrimonious manner. The other way to increase access to justice, I would think, actually more importantly, is through educating the public. Right, going back to my earlier point, how do the public actually is aware of what rights they even have in the first place before they can even decide to bring any legal action? So that in itself is important. And I would dare say, at least even organizations, MSCs like ourselves, we have in-house counsels participating in pro bono activities. So in the past few years, some of the pro bono activities that we have supported include, for example, giving speeches, giving talks, right, to university students, to NGOs, non-governmental organizations relating to protection against harassment, right? Then the other type of activities that we also supported in the past includes providing, support in populating a FAQ relating to anti-child marriage in the region, including Singapore. So we all play a role in increasing access to justice. Like I said, and education and knowledge is power. I think it's not underrated. It's something that needs to be embraced, even in the concept of access to justice.
So I mean, according to you, this is also a tangible moment or a way in terms of closing the justice gap.
Yes,
That was supposed to be my next question. I was supposed to ask you that, but you literally covered that. And how would you rate if you on a scale of 10, let's say? I mean, we're not here on a 30-minute session, or at least I'm not here for a 30-minute session to ask you this question, but still, for our understanding, for our viewers' understanding, uh, what will you rate the current legal systems drive towards encouraging justice on a scale of 10, let's say?
Yeah, okay. So I can only speak, I guess, only for mainly like Singapore or the more developed nations. I think maybe I would be venture, I guess, around seven, maybe seven. Because as I said, we do have infrastructures already built. And I think the first step is acknowledging the need for access to justice. That's the first step, right? And then building the infrastructures around it. So I would say, yeah, we are good seven, maybe, but close, maybe a low seven, maybe close to even a six, dropping below six, if we don't do more efforts in stepping out on this. But as I said, I still want to throw caution in the wind, right? At the end of the day, having access to justice, we need to balance out what kind of society we want to create. We do not want to create, by increasing access to justice and then create a highly litigious society. There needs to be that balance that still needs to be in place.
Rightly said, basics is the key. So infrastructure is the key, as you mentioned. That's what's the debate here in India. I mean, we always talk about remote proceedings and everything, and closing justice gap, but we also talk about building a better infrastructure, or to build a robust infrastructure, or to rectify it, as in when we have. All right, great, beautiful session so far. As I said, I also want to understand now about as an in-house counselor, uh, how can in-house counsels manage the barrage of different regulatory legislative progress in the markets that the councils support, and ensure that they keep themselves continuously updated in face of such developments?
Yes. So on this note, right, I just want to also call out, most instances, in-house counsels maybe do not see themselves as well knowledge in the field of law, because they will see themselves as in-house counsels not having those opportunities, like for example external lawyers, right, having those in-depth knowledge. So I would say in-house counsels need to start with the right frame of mindset that in relation to managing the barrage of issues, the range of questions, and the developments in law, they need to at least first instance appreciate that what they need to empower themselves with knowledge is the right enough level of knowledge that can allow them to raise red flags or concerns for the business, right? And of course, reaching out for support from external lawyers. As a baseline for lawyers, for in-house counsels to educate themselves to this level of baseline, then the next step will be for them to appreciate the need to go and venture out, okay, what exactly is the type of law, the information that I need to have myself equipped with. And this is very important in order to make sure that the external counsels remain relevant in the change of developing law. They need to first and foremost consider building among themselves a network, a network of support within their own counsels in the same industry, as well as external law firms. This is very important because, as I said, one man cannot just or women cannot really appreciate the whole full extent of developments of law. They need the support of a community. That is very important. That's one. The second thing that I want to call is also getting themselves, in-house department should consider developing the sort of a knowledge base. And the knowledge base does not necessarily mean just simply a repository. Again, drawing examples from our own organization, we have developed what we call, communities of practices, looking at different aspects of the law. And those different aspects of the law will be recognized as legal knowledge that you need as an in-house counsel to help you with a day-to-day job, right? So that is also important because a community of lawyers within the in-house department, within the in-house group, helps the lawyers appreciate more what are some of the nuances of laws that you may not be equipped with. And also through those sharing groups, it helps you to understand a new development in other countries might actually be a new development in your market in the near future. So one example, right? Most countries are very different in terms of their level of regulations relating to environmental and sustainability. Okay, markets like EU, for example, US are more pronounced in those developments, but in this part of the world, like Asia, we might be quite far away. So having those internal discussions do help us appreciate what potentially could be the laws in those markets and how they might actually be adopted in this region as well. So I'll say, in order to keep yourself updated, don't just be a reactive individual, taking only the laws as and when you need to use them in your advice to the clients or internal stakeholders. But more importantly is being proactive in your own development, in your own learning through those small groups, either through external network or internal groups as well. And then, of course, the other thing is, don't just limit your knowledge base to only lawyers or external in-house counsels. Look beyond. So again, drawing examples, within our organization, we have organized hackathons with law firms. We have organized trips to technological firms because we really know that the new space could be health tech. So we actually venture into the aspect as well. So trying to look beyond the legal fraternity and your own industry and go beyond that. Because again, you need to be proactive to be able to keep yourselves updated with the law, right? But as I said at the beginning of this, at the end of the day, it's not to have an in-depth, detailed expert knowledge in that area, but to know enough to call out the red flags, to know enough to know when you need to reach out for more support.
I mean, that's being called prepared as well. So yeah, that is beautiful. In the being updated also sometimes brings technology into the play. And when legal tech is coming so much in Asian market in every sense, what are the technologies or tools that you use, to stay updated, or commonly used tools for you?
Yeah. So I would say, yes, you're right. I mean, the legal technology, as I would call it, right? Legal tech for short, is getting pace in every aspect of the world, including Asia. Asia is not, of course, spared from the whole rise in legal tech. And right now, our use of legal tech has been primarily in the space of administrative matters. So for example, documents retention, contract management, contract storage. And beyond that, we also look at the technologies that actually helps us to collaborate much better with the internal stakeholders beyond the legal department. So collaborative tools is another technological tool that we have been using and adopting within the organization, and more so because of the pandemic situation, right? And I guess some of the key collaborative tools is not unusual, things like Microsoft Teams, and so on and so forth. So yeah, those are in fact some of the tools that we have been adopting within the organization.
I know. Great to know that as well. Another, I should say, the last question of the session would be, uh, I guess lawyers are the best profile to ask this. You see, time management, and we are also talking about complexity and so many tasks being and so many hens on the same deck. Uh, how do you manage your time? Or if I have to ask it more nicely, time is money in any profession, and in legal, it's most of all. So, how do you ensure to make the best out of your time as a lawyer and as an individual for your family as
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you hit the nail on the head, right? I think this is again an age-old question. How do we manage time in the midst of competing uh, requests for support, and also in the face of limiting resources? It's not unusual for legal in-house legal departments to be set up with independent contributors, one lawyer supporting like 3, 4, 5, 6 over businesses. So I would say, first and foremost, again, technology is a tool that can actually facilitate that, which is why, to my earlier point, how to use technology to sort of reduce the administrative tasks the in-house counsels or departments need to do, because those are really low-value work that the in-house counsels shouldn't be sort of spending time on. The other way of doing it again is, you might be after this session thinking that I'm a big proponent for education, but it is what it is, right? At the end of the day, helping the businesses to keep up and understand what are some of the key legal issues that they need to actually manage on their own. And then in that process is again, educating them, spending time closer with them to sort of share those information with them. This will actually gives you less time to having to we discuss basic principles of law and going straight to, okay, what are the key issues? Because they already are familiar with what are the key considerations that they need to be mindful about. So I would say it's a collection of both technology and education. If you ask me, the short answer to your question.
I mean, beautiful. That's a beautiful answer, Mr. Tay. Wise words from a wise man. As I said, so far this has been a great session. I have enjoyed it, and I have a lot more things to ask you, but I guess we are running short on time, and you are a busy bee, so I'm not going to hold much here. But I promise our viewers that you're going to see Mr. Tay again on LexTalk, either in the conference or in the show again. I mean, of course, you will see them in the conference, but in the show again, we'll also try to get a hold of him uh, before the conference or post conference. So, thank you very much, Mr. Tay, for sharing such great insights with us. And we look forward to having a chat with you again. And I really mean it in the future on some other trending topics in the international legal industry. Thank you very much for the session today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
This is great. And finally, for our viewers, if you like this chat with Mr. Frederick Tay, I want you to like this video, to share this video, and to click on that red button and subscribe to Click of the Creators YouTube channel to appreciate what we do. And you have more coming in from legal industry leaders like Mr. Frederick Tay. This was Sagar for Let's Talk World signing off.